I was standing on the side and I was still kind of worried.
It's business. I've fortunate enough to talk to Mr. Kevin.
Get one that's pre-lit.
Mother-in-law's church.
He said I did the right thing, put you in the corner.
I told her where I want to be behind the fence.
Kids are gone, I'm gonna keep mine all this time from one room to one.
Well, he brought some books and he was selling for $10 a piece for, to raise money for he sponsored
I was afraid the meeting started to quiet, I was gonna go off. I don't have to change the bill.
all kind of cool stuff for kids at the time. And so he raised that money for them.
It's pretty cool, I love it.
Yeah, he's a good guy. 85 ago.
I want to call this meeting to order. I have it at 6 o'clock. Roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Breimer,
Present.
Ms. Borelli,
Present.
Mr. Burrows,
Present.
Mr. Collins,
Present.
Mr. Garner,
Present.
Mr. Hess, Ms. Jordan. Mr. Chairman, she texted about 3 minutes ago and said she should be here within a few minutes.
Okay.
And Sarah is calling in.
Mr. Maxwell,
Present.
Mr. McClellan,
Here.
Mr. Morris is absent, and Ms. Pritchard is calling. You have a quorum, sir.
All right. First thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda. And I need a motion and a second.
Before we do, does anything need to change with me putting forth sending this resolution forth? Does that need to be on the agenda?
If there's a motion to add it.
Okay, I'd like a motion to add, the resolution that we sent out via email, resolution the Board of Directors, of the McClellan Development Authority.
All those in favor say aye.
So, Mr. Chairman, you have the agenda as amended.
Okay. And we need to approve that agenda, right?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody disapprove, say no, please. I need a motion to approve the previous minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor of approving those minutes, say aye. Any opposed? Next thing on our agenda is a review and discussion of findings of the MDA Oversight Committee.
Just one second. So I provided some read-ahead, material, which is gonna be a copy of, basically a summary of the draft of the minutes from the MDA Oversight Committee meeting on November 26th. I provided those to the board, whenever we received them, and the minutes do kind of go over most of the findings, but I also have a list here of the findings that we'll go over. The Oversight Committee had asked for information from the MDA. And after reviewing that, information, I wasn't involved in that, but I do have a list of some of the findings. Some of the issues were that they believed they were missing, any and all minutes prior to January 11th, 2018, minutes for December 4th, 2017, for September 4th, 2018, December 5th, 2018, notes pertaining to the meeting dates changing, any and all documents, proposals, requests presented to the board relating to the buy-sell exchange and lease of property. Documentation of compliance with public works bid laws. And then there was information in there on when an authority shall have to comply with public bid laws, especially considering, again, the public works primarily. Some of the specific contracts were, well, actually, I'm not going to read the specific contracts that were in question. There was a question about compliance with Open Meeting Acts. And then whether or not minutes reflected the executive sessions, and then whether they were voted on properly after the fact, whether or not things were referred to as by code name or instead of by the actual project itself. Those were some of the things. So I have some other observations that were gone over during the meeting, which was that economic development requires confidentiality in some cases, but in public interest, that has to be balanced with transparency. So that's something that was also brought up by the Oversight Committee. I don't want to read everything in here because that was provided ahead of time to the board members, so they are aware of what was in there. But I have a few other things to go over from this. I want to read the meeting was hosted by the Calhoun County Commission at the administration building. Again, that was November 26th at 6 p.m. The people that were present were Chairwoman Henderson, Senator Keith Kelly, Representative Mark Gidley, Representative Randy Wood, Representative Chad Robertson, Commissioner Fred Wilson, Commissioner Danny Shears, Commissioner Carolyn Henderson, Commissioner Lee Patterson, Anniston Mayor Jack Draper, Councilman Roberts, Councilwoman Sierra Smith, Councilwoman Harris. So with all of those present, they did go through those notes, and then there were some other things that were mentioned in there. There was letters that were drafted, and then observations that were discussed. Senator Kelly did read information provided from the State of Alabama Examiner of Public Accounts about some questions that they had and some discrepancies that they highlighted. There were concerns expressed by members in that meeting, and then there was a motion that was read, which I'll wait till the next part of the agenda. But that's the basics that they went over in the Oversight Committee. And after discussing basically the findings of the committee, there was a motion that was made by the mayor of the City of Anniston. I will wait until, if there's any discussion on this matter before I read that motion, unless you want me to go ahead and read the motion.
Fine with me.
Okay.
If you want to.
And then we can discuss it at the same time. Okay. All right. The motion that was read and was approved by the Oversight Committee was that they made by Mayor Draper, and it's, I move that the Oversight Committee hereby recommend that the Board of Directors of the McClellan Development Authority convene a meeting no later than January 2025 to adopt a resolution making the determination that it is not possible for the authority to achieve all of the purposes for which it was formed, and resolving to make adequate provisions over the succeeding 90 days to provide for the orderly transfer of the authority's remaining debts, assets, properties, and obligations to its successor, and immediately thereafter for the board to adopt a resolution recommending dissolution in accordance with Alabama Code 1192B 20A for the approval of the Council of the City of Anniston and the Calhoun County Commission.
Come on, man.
So, alright. So to discuss that, there were the issue that what I'm looking at here as far as discussion goes, there are things that were listed by the Oversight Committee that are probably errors that have been committed by the board. Not everything is. There are a lot of things that maybe that they just were not aware of. That could be true. However, that's not really what I think all of this is about. I think that the issue is the MDA was created for a purpose, and it was created in 2010. It's 2024. There is no way for this board to do everything that it was put here for. And that's not because of the fault of this board. It's because of the fault of the way that the bylaws and the way that the legislation was written. As everybody in here knows, the board makes money on the sale of property, and that's just about it. They can't tax. You can't do anything but sell property. So immediately off the bat, there is kind of a fault there. The board has done what was in its power to do for a very long time, but it's also limited in, the board doesn't control zoning. The board can't offer real incentives to businesses. That's something that the city can do. They can't, a lot of tax incentives, they just can't do that. This board has been comprised of good people, very good people, that have given their time, their effort, their energy to doing what's best for McClellan and doing what's best for the city and county. But I believe, and I think there are others that believe, that you can only go so far, and I don't believe that there's a way that this board can continue and to ever do. I don't think that they can finish. I think that they have reached the limit to about what we can do, and it is time to transfer to the City of Anniston.
I guess we are open, our agenda calls for an open discussion.
You need a motion for that?
No,
Just open discussion.
just open discussion.
And I agree with this. Aaron Acker, as hard as he works and has done the planning on, a subdivision, which is really needed. At the end of the day, it's still gotta go to Anniston to be approved. He can do all this hard work and all this time and do everything within his power. But, and he's got a great project. But, the city is got the last say so. So, I agree that we need to, help move it forward.
Would that not be the same though for any organization that had it? I mean, if regardless of whether the MDA or the City of Anniston sells a piece of property to any developer, you know, for any type of development, is that not also gonna be the case? It still has to get past the zoning and all of the different permitting and everything.
But that's within the city, and you know, we've, as the city has the right, as opposed to what the county, been on the county commission long, I mean, we had to go through the legislature to get any kind of revenue or any, to pass anything. And the city, their laws are completely different. And they can, and Mayor Draper can actually have better than I can, but they can, any municipality can, has so much more authority on projects that they do.
They also have the ability to use land as, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, city, but they have the ability to use land as an incentive. If they've got a huge developer that wants to come in, they can, you know, they have the ability to trade taxes for that, you know, offset their taxes for however many years they want to. I believe they can give them property if they choose to. It would depend on the developer. I mean, you can bring a lot bigger people in there. I mean, you got, I mean, gosh, the city of Oxford, folk, you may know, you're an Oxford boy, right? You talk about that all the time. I mean, they abated a lot of those businesses when they brought that exchange in for years and years and years. But that's how they bring them in. And the city has that authority, they have the ability to do that.
But they could do that
They
even
could,
with the MDA
they could,
technically owning the property.
they could, but
It just
when they
hasn't
are
been
the
done
ones,
yet,
well,
right?
when they're the ones that do it, they can control how that looks. And they control those people once they're even in there, they control that revenue, they're the ones that are gonna make those tax payments back to whatever organizations, cause a lot of times they pay the taxes and get reimbursed the taxes. So they just have a lot more power when they are in control of their own, deals.
Is it not possible to do that now? I mean, is that just simply not an option?
It
Or
is.
is it just not, it just hasn't been done?
So it is probably, I imagine it is possible, but it's another level of bureaucracy that's not necessary. And a lot of people don't wanna go through that many organizations when they can work right with one authority. They can contact the City of Anniston, they can go through their economic development or through the mayor or through whoever, but at the city, and that's it. They don't have to go through the city and the board, and it takes a level out that is very unpleasant for people. They don't like that. They want one organization to work with. A lot of them, not all of them. Cause
But the
that's
city
making a
did-
generalization.
The city did say they were gonna create a committee.
An advisory committee,
Okay.
an advisory committee, but it wouldn't be a committee that, I mean, I guess it'd be like, most of the other advisory committees where they can't tell them exactly what to do, but they do advise them on what they believe is best.
I'd like to read a statement that was in the paper to everybody. You might have already read it, but I'll read it. I thought it was kind of interesting. I copied it. Simplifying and streamlining redevelopment at McClellan by eliminating the MDA and giving the City of Anniston direct responsibility for the former base will benefit the entire community and make it easier to bring new business and jobs to the area. Hey, Jim and I have been on this board for 12 years. We joined the same time, didn't we, Jim? Every year they talk about doubling our pay, and I get said check. How about you, Jim? The reason I serve on this board is to help our community. Julie's quick to point out, first thing I said when I come here is, the very first thing you need to know about me is I'm an Oxford boy. Leon Smith was the mayor at the time, and I thought highly of him, and I wanted to come here to help serve our community. I've done that. Every issue I voted on, every decision I made is not about MDA or City of Anniston or Calhoun County Commission or the City of Oxford. I serve this area gladly, cheerfully. We're all volunteers here, and I believe that's the reason everybody's here, is to help our community. And at the end of the day, if dissolving this helps our community, I'm certainly for it. If you want us to stay and help our community, I'm for that as well. I believe everybody here is of the same heart. We want to do what's best to serve the people of East Alabama. Now, if streamlining this process and making things are easy, as a businessman, I can tell you, I'm all for that. And if that means dissolving this board tonight, so be it.
Anybody else with discussion? No?
Go ahead.
You go.
I apologize for my tardiness. Was there any prior discussion about the environmental issues that still need to be addressed?
There's been no discussion.
Okay. How is that gonna be handled? Where's the ESCA budget stand now, Jason?
The funds are held by the Army.
Right, but I mean, like,
The Army still
how
has
far
about,
along, like,
How much money's left?
see, the Army still has about $37 million.
okay, and a percentage of the total budget, like, where are we along in
Don't
that?
have
Just
those
for
numbers. Well, I mean,
everybody else?
the ESCA itself is projected to go out to 2037.
Right, so, a lot has been accomplished, but there is still a lot that needs to be done.
Regular groundwater monitoring, there are still issues with the landfills. There are covenants that are in the process. There are a number of issues with the ESCA program that are ongoing.
And there's a lot of land that we simply can't sell,
That's correct.
and a lot of land that we couldn't sell initially.
Correct.
Will that work come to a halt if it's transferred to the City of Anniston, or will it continue to go forward?
I can't speak for the Army. I can say what happened to a base in Texas that we were warned about a year or two ago. And that is when a change of control occurred, the Army considered that a change in the ESCA and they took all the money back.
Is there any risk of any of the money that has been paid already? Like, is there any kind of refund provision or anything? Like, if we transfer it, they don't get any money back. They're not gonna say, you owe us X million dollars back.
No.
They just may not give more money that they have already allocated.
That's possible.
Okay,
And if it's not properly requested, it would not be allocated either.
okay.
So that shutdown process will take a period of time. There are a lot of equipment and things that are ongoing now that would have to be considered. If that would
I
be
mean,
the case.
I can't speak for Matrix, they're here. But if they were not getting paid, I imagine they would not stay very long.
And what are the repercussions if that were to happen?
Well, if we transfer all the assets and liabilities to the City of Anniston, that's a liability the City of Anniston would have to shoulder, whether they get the Army money or not.
So they would be responsible financially, potentially, for continuing that.
Correct, it's under the jurisdiction of ADEM.
Okay. So ADM could come and say, you gotta keep doing this, and what would happen if the city couldn't pay for it?
I would leave that to the city's folks to discuss.
I think that's gonna be part of that 90-day due diligence process. So it wouldn't be it wouldn't be a dissolution immediately. It does open up the door for a 90-day, transfer of power, but really what it is that due diligence process. Because according to the bylaws, you can't transfer anything until the board is dissolved, but you can't dissolve, the city and the county have to accept a dissolution. In order to accept a dissolution, they're gonna have to know what all McClellan has, know all the details, and that would include the ESCA fund, and that would include all of that. They won't know until they get a chance to look at all that and to do that due diligence. I mean, it may be that 90 days passes, and they say, we're not gonna be able to get the fund, we won't be able to get the ESCA funds, because that's one of the things they would investigate. We can't take it. But they won't know until that happens. And that's been one of the other issues is that I know that Mr. McClellan wanted a plan, wanted to know what the city's plan was. We discussed that. And one of the issues with the plan is they really can't provide one without a due diligence period. Until they know everything that's here and everything they do and all the contracts and all the things, it's hard to put together a plan, cause you gotta know what you got to plan with it. But that's what that 90 days is for. It's for that kind of thing. It's for that plan. It's for finding out about the ESCA funds. It's for finding out about the contract, what would be honored, what's, that's what that 90 days is for.
So what's stopping the planning from going forward, a word from the MDA?
That's what the 90 days is for. It would be the plan, it would be, to work with them to figure out the transfer.
I understand that.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I understand what the 90-day transition periods look like, but nobody goes into battle without knowing where they're going or have some idea. So when we're talking about a 90-day plan, see what I'm hearing here, and I'm very new on this board. So there's a lot of things that may have, even the dates that you talked about in 2017, 2018, I wasn't around, I don't know what was going on there. But I do know that since I've been on the board, I haven't seen the coordination that ought to be present on both sides. So I hear a lot of things, but I hear a lot of compliance issues. What if steps have been taken to correct those compliance issues so everyone gets along? Simply saying that a third party does not like going through another party and it streamlines it. Maybe it does on one side, but maybe it picks up a whole lot of work on the other side. So why aren't we talking about compliance? Why aren't we all coming to the line as a team? Because I thought that's what I was joining. I didn't realize I was joining a force against force. Now, if I come and ask for something, I don't understand why I can't get it, and vice versa. If the city needs information and data, it should flow like rivers. So to now, for me to be here for almost 2 years to say, well, you've been completely out of compliance and we're ready to shut you down. I mean, it ain't gonna change my paycheck. But I don't think that's the way business should be done. So whatever the board decides, whatever the city decides, I'm gonna be all for it. But I thought I was sent here to help and deal with some issues that were before the city. I thought that's what we were all put here for. Not to be bickering, going back and forth about, well, I need this and you don't have your dog tag and I ain't got my chain and your dog off the leash. I would think that we would say, I found your dog and here he is and this is what you need to do. And I'm gonna give you this amount of time to accomplish that. If you are unable to accomplish that, tell me now, or we move forward. But to get mad and pick my marbles up, I've never been part of an organization like that.
So I don't think this is new. I know this has been in discussion for several years now, and I don't think it's people fight. It's not. I don't think it's bickering. Everybody in here on this board wants what's best for their for McClellan,
I
for the
wanna
city, for the
know
county.
what the miscompliance is. What is lacking and deficient from the city? You seem to have a list there established. I think the next thing is to resolve that. Is the resolution of that to say, well, that's it, it can't work? Is that what we're saying?
I don't think it's necessarily because of what's on that list.
So what is it?
It's because they just believe, people believe it's time for the MDA to dissolve so that the city of Anniston can manage the property at McClellan.
So I'll take that answer and I'll go with it. It doesn't seem satisfactory, it doesn't seem very detailed, but the city has the right and the people have the right. But I would like to deal with entities that are much more precise in their parameters and their follow through.
Was the ESCA information not provided in the other report that was given to the oversight committee?
Everything that Senator Kelly's office asked for was provided with regards to the ESCA program.
I don't know if But that was one of the things that they requested and they received, so.
And I don't believe there was any deficiencies listed with regard to the ESCO program.
Okay. I mean,
If
I would
were-
think that would be a hard no for every side of this. If the ESCA money isn't gonna continue, I would think that the city of Anniston wouldn't want it yet. If they were gonna be on the hook for that because the money wasn't gonna continue. But if I understood you correctly, unless the board votes to dissolve,
Right.
then the city isn't even gonna look at that.
No, that's not correct.
Okay. I thought you said we had to vote to
No.
dissolve, and then there was a
Yes.
90-day period.
No, if I
Which
spoke,
then
if I
to
said it
develop.
that way, then
Okay.
that was a misstatement. According to the bylaws, the way it would work is for the transfer of everything, it would
Right.
have to be after dissolution.
Right,
The resolution that I sent out earlier, they're not dissolving yet.
I understand that, but we would
Yeah,
have
so-
to vote that we are going to dissolve.
Yes, and that would be
Well, I'm
after,
not willing to vote.
that would
that we're-
be after the 90
Okay,
days.
but I'm not gonna be willing to vote to dissolve until I know that the ESCA money is
You would-
gonna
you
continue and that the city is willing to take the property.
Well, the city would have to vote to accept once the board dissolved. So, if the board votes to dissolve, then the city and the county both have to accept that.
Okay,
So it can't be forced upon them, it
right,
has to be accepted.
right.
But they would ensure that the ESCA funds transferred before they voted to accept it, they're not gonna accept it. if the ESCA
Well, I don't
funds
know if they
transfer.
would do that or not. I would hope that that would be their
That's
answer,
correct.
but I'm not sure that they're
So-
gonna look into it well enough. I would have hoped that a city in
Yeah.
Texas wouldn't have done that either, but
So-
they did, so.
So they would, they are very, I know that they are very aware of the ESCA program, the ESCA funds, and that is
Okay.
that's a very, very important aspect of what they do here and what Jason's done.
I mean, that's too important for me to do anything less than knowing that that's gonna happen before I said yes.
And that's just part of the due diligence.
But that's not gonna occur until after,
No, that can occur during the 90-day period.
yeah, but we would have already had to vote
No,
to
not to vote to dissolve. Vote to dissolve is after the 90-day period.
vote for what then?
It's voting to start the process to help them so that they can do due diligence.
What more do they need other than what we've already provided?
I think this is the same process that the chairman has asked the mayor to engage in for the last year and a half, to talk about a plan.
Okay.
So it'll be
is there a
presenting.
way that,
Go ahead.
is there a way that we can vote to potentially dissolve if the city agrees to take it and they meet whatever requirements? I mean, it sounds like there's no way for the MDA to back out. I mean, let's just say that the city of Anniston doesn't make a good plan and they don't really know whether they're gonna get the ESCA money or not.
Well, they would know before we vote to dissolve. Or not to dissolve. They would know prior to
Okay,
that,
all right.
for sure.
They would know prior to acceptance of the dissolution.
They would know prior to the
not
dissolution.
Prior to the,
So what's the difference? So there's two votes by the MDA?
Yes.
What's the first vote
The
called?
first vote is to start,
Begin the proceeding.
it's the,
To
it's
begin the
procedure,
proceedings? Okay.
begin the proceedings. It's what was in the resolution.
Okay.
Jason, do you think 90 days is time enough to, for the ESCA fund?
Have not even had the discussion with the Army or Matrix. I couldn't say. Haven't had a discussion with anyone from the city.
And I don't know, this question may be more for Julie than anybody else. Based on the utilities that are available here now, you know, because of the conversations we've had about a water tower and everything, how much of the land is actually usable without having to have, which I assume a lot of places out here, you can't have a well anyway. But how much of
Site-
the land is
site-wide.
actually usable?
There's a site-wide prohibition on groundwater usage
Okay,
for
so,
potable consumption.
but a lot of the land, we simply can't sell currently, not saying ever, but, you know, part of the time that the MDA has existed, we couldn't sell land because it had environmental remediation and everything that was going on. Part of the time, it's been a utility issue. Do you have a rough estimate of the land, rough estimate of how much has utility concerns?
Just kinda guessing, but for the water tower that we've been working on for, starting before I got here, so for over 10 years now. That's for the Edward Hill and, the hill off of Boxell Gate, and that's residential. If you're looking over here on the Iron Mountain side, I mean, none of that has water. And it was always determined that you've got to have the water tower at Edward Hill first before you can put a water tower in over on this side, because it's safe. So, and that's coming from the water department and all the years and the studies and stuff, so there still is that big issue. And that's why we focused, just to mention, the reason we focused on the park at McClellan, the residential property, was it is residential, it has the majority of the utilities already in there, we already priced what it would cost to add any of that. And the MDA decided to develop it, which is part of our job, is because nobody else has wanted to. Otherwise, certainly would have loved to have a developer come in. And no developer's gonna come in and develop the other residential if you don't have water.
Mr. Chairman, I happen to notice that we have the mayor and the city manager from Anniston here. Would it be okay for them to speak and kind of share with us what their thoughts are, if they'd be willing to?
Sure. Be happy to. First, there does appear to be a concern about the ESCA funds. Mr. Odo talked about meetings over the last year and a half. We've actually had meetings with Mr. McClellan and others, and we've let folks know that we would continue to contract with Matrix, quite frankly. And I see no reason why those funds would not still be coming in. I see no reason why those funds could not still be administered. What the city's plan would be, if the MDA begins the process of dissolution tonight, in that 90-day period, the city would create a department. As Ms. Borelli suggested, that department would be advised by a citizen committee, much like this. But look, at the end of the day, the city of Anniston, any city, frankly, is in a better position to develop property than a citizen board. We appreciate the efforts of the MDA, and we recognize that it is a difficult task. But the city has economic development tools at its disposal, like tax abatements, like other incentives, that we have been employing for years, and frankly have employed on this North Anniston development. The MDA does add another layer of developmental bureaucracy that does make it difficult on developers wishing to develop this property. And so at the end of the day, the city will work in concert with the county, with the legislative delegation. We appreciate the partnerships with the legislative delegation and the county. Certainly, we hope that you will take this action tonight, and we can begin this process in earnest. Happy to answer any questions.
What about the staff?
Well, I think we've also indicated that the staff would be.
Well, that hasn't come directly to me from the city, so that's.
Well, it's been difficult to me. We absolutely agree with that. But Mr. Folks does the hiring on behalf of the city, and I know he's indicated that those employed here.
If I name that.
No, yes, sir, absolutely.
And I've received information about the staff that's out here. I've already researched our budget. Our budget can actually take care of that without even hurting us. We don't have to worry about anything else because I've looked at the salaries. Thanks to, they were shared with one of your board members. You shared it with board member shared it with me. And these are the things we asked, but there was never any, we always was gonna actually take care of that maintenance staff, the thing staff, because we can't move forward without it. And I just say, with the mayor, just a good example is our North Anniston development that we're doing Summerall. Again, that was in the care of the MDA. They gave it to us after all those years. And right now, the property is starting to be developed because we have the tools to develop it. We have the 772s, the Constitution 772s that we can do, and those things can be done. And that's the same thing we're trying to do. This is not adversarial. This is not one of those things. We're just trying to do what's best for the city of Anniston without the bureaucracy. Because I hear this constantly, when you have to come to MDA, then you have to come to the city. That's just too much shit that they have to go through. So that is the reason that we're doing. We have, as a plan at 90 days, put a plan in place to ensure to do the same thing that we're already doing, develop this area. And North Anniston is really a key area to redevelop.
And just briefly, in addition to that, I mean, you know, the city will obviously work with the MDA in this transitionary period that this action is begun and initiated tonight. And again, we hope that it is.
Has all of the land that was previously given to the city been developed?
It is in the
Like they're
process
next
of
to
being
all
developed
the-
now. You can see it being developed now. And that's been a partnership not only with the private developer, but with the Alabama Department of Transportation.
Keep in mind, when this was done, the most things that the city got was recreational. And I think you can see that what the city's done with all the recreational policy, that was actually given to the city. The North Anniston came at a later date when it was given to MDA, but those recreational properties that we have been developed, and I think have been developed well.
And yeah, y'all understand proprietary information. I think that the city will begin to make announcements on tenants for that property, possibly even later this month or the beginning of next.
Mayor Jamie, she brought up a good point about the ESCO funds.
Sure.
That's certainly a concern. What would the city of Anniston do if you weren't able to take over the ESCO fund?
Well, we'd obviously have to wrap our heads around that, quite frankly. I mean, it would be a difficult decision for us to take the property without those funds. I think we all recognize that. But again, no one has presented me any information that would suggest that we would not continue to receive that money. Again, as we have told members of the board, we would like to continue to contract with Matrix for the administration of those funds.
What would be the first steps that we would take? Not as a board, but as a community into moving forward to see if that's available?
With respect to the ESCO funds?
Yeah, yes.
Well, we would work with Matrix and the DOD. I can tell you we've got a good relationship with the federal government. We've got channels of communication with the feds. We're working with DOD now on another project unrelated to McClellan.
Have you spoken with them any at all about the ESCO?
Not with respect to the ESCO funds, no. But again, I've been presented no evidence that it would be an issue. Just because the city takes over the property, you know, the funds, again, the city can contract with Matrix just as easily as can the MDA.
I think you had somebody here from the
County
county.
administrator with us. Jonathan, you got anything? Hey, we put the 3-minute rule on you.
You should put it on me.
We did that on the commission one time.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Just a few brief remarks in concurrence with the previous remarks from the mayor and the city manager. The county commission has expressed in no uncertain terms that they are behind this initiative with the city. And speaking on behalf of the 5 commissioners who I represent, I can tell you most assuredly the appreciation for the long history with first the JPA and the MDA and the board members and the staff that have come through this program is real and deep. Each of you on this board was appointed to represent someone who was elected by the members of the community, and I respect very deeply the comments that were made earlier about serving the community and the citizens here. We have to think about what this looks like from the outside looking in. There are many residents, no doubt, tonight at home watching the proceedings of this meeting, and we need to think about what the image we want to present to the world of Anniston, Calhoun County, and this community really is. And if we've got an opportunity to reorganize and really demonstrate that we're all on the same team, I think that's an opportunity that would serve the citizens the best in the long run. The voice of the elected officials, the legislative delegation, city officials, and the county commission speaking unanimously that they want to move in this direction, I think is very strong and should certainly be taken into consideration. I've been a public servant all my career, and I tell each of my bosses that I have a lot of respect for the citizens that put them in office, because they are the face of the voters and the residents in this community. And I think we have an ask here from those representatives of our peers in this community to move forward, and we have to have some faith and trust in that, and that we can work through an organized, orderly process that demonstrates we're all working together cooperatively with a team spirit. And that's the opportunity that I understand is before you and the board tonight, Mr. Chairman. So I would encourage you to view it through that lens. I don't believe that anybody has an expectation that we are always in agreement on things. It's good to have a diversity of opinions and to have a range of options of how we move forward as a community. We've tried a couple of things in the past, and I believe it's time to try something different, and that's the message that our elected representatives have made very clear. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Just to be clear, all the county commissioners are for this, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, we also fortunate enough to have our state senator here, Mr. Keith Kelly. Keith, with the chairman's permission, would you like to say anything?
Please do. You're welcome.
Yeah, I just concur with what the city has presented in the county as well. We went through a lot of information. This is a subject matter that I'm fairly diverse in because of what I do to make a living and develop, and also I see the other sides and the things we have to work through. One of the biggest things on economic recruitment is having the availability to bring people in with as less bureaucracy and red tape as possible. The quickest way to lose it is to bring people in and make them jump through more hoops than they're ready to jump through. So that's something that I think is really important to this. One of the other things is, the last couple of years, we've passed some pretty good economic development legislation that I think gives some opportunities that maybe hasn't been available before, or it's certainly not to the degree that they have. So the legislative delegation unanimously supported what the city and the county was proposing to do with this motion. And I'll be glad to address anything if you've got any questions.
You heard us talk a little bit about the ESCA fund. Do you have a thought or an opinion on that?
Just an opinion. I don't see where there would be an issue with that, especially with our delegation that we've got on the federal level. You've got the chairman of the military affairs there from here. So, and you've got a president that is very, very strong on military. So I don't see that there would be an issue with the funds being transferred, especially in light of keeping things the way that they have been as far as the administration of those. Actually, I don't know that there's actually other layers of accountability that maybe were not available to a development authority. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
I guess we're looking, the next thing on the agenda is public comments, if there's any others. Any public?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If I could. With respect to the chairman, board members, let the records reflect, my name is Quentin J. Burrow, and I am a resident here on McClellan, along with Breonna Ferris and other members of the residents surrounding us. I've been out here now since 2022. I'm a former military member, I'm a current government employee. I believe that when the MDA was, first came into conception, it was an opportunity for the city. When the BRAC team came down, they saw a great opportunity, a lot of resources, a lot of land that was not available to the public until the military went away. But it has been stated already that the MDA has had several years to develop land. And from a resident from the outside looking in, it looks very bad for the city when you have what could be potential resources. When new residents come into Calhoun County, sad but true, they bypass Anniston. They go directly to Oxford because Oxford has revenue businesses, great schools, communities. They go to Jacksonville because Jacksonville paints the image. Everybody bypasses Anniston. But what the public doesn't know is that there is red tape that sits between the City of Anniston. It's called the MDA, but the public doesn't know that. And so they automatically put that punt onto the city. And so people bypass the city and they don't understand the opportunities that are here. One good point that Chairman Burrell stated is that the MDA gains revenue through sales of land, but yet the MDA picks and chooses who they sell land to. For example, I have land on on McClellan, but it was told personally to me that I already have too much land, so therefore the land was not sold to me. I have other residents and other people along this walls that are not in this room that were told the same thing. And so we're not going to go into why the land wasn't sold, but if that revenue is the reason, if land is the reason that you have revenue, then why is land denied to individuals that want to buy the land? And so that is a very big deficiency that needs to be brought unto the board. True enough, there is an ESCA fund and there is an EPA concern, but it doesn't matter who comes in. Someone is going to have to address that. And ultimately, the MDA has did a great job to get us to this point. But as Ms. Burrell stated, when it was first brought into conception, no one knew the issues that would come upon this. It should have been a responsibility of the MDA to go and revamp their constitution, bylaws, or edicts to make it fit to current day standards. But if the MDA did not do that, then they have gone as far as they could go. You need to let another entity come in and be responsible for the deficiency that the MDA did not meet. I understand that in 1999, we did not know that there were going to be landmines and bricks and dumps and everything out here. I live where there's a landfill behind me, and I was told that nothing can be built there for another 100 years because of the landfill. But has anything been done by the MDA to address the current day issues? Yes, that was almost 20 years ago. Things were different then. But we cannot continue to stay in the past. If we want to move the city forward, then we need to allow the city to come in and be the strong hand that we need to move forward. I understand what the representative said. She had concerns about what if. Well, that would be the concern of the city. Because like I said, the MDA has had several years to make changes. And if those changes have not been made, then respectively, why does the MDA care what the city does? Because they had several years to correct the issue. Let the city fall on their own sword if they want to. But currently, if the city councilman, if the county commissioner, if the state senators are all in agreement, if the residents are here standing firm, I had a surgical procedure today. Should not even be up. But my community is important to me. So I excused my dress to the city manager because I wanted to be here to see how is this going to move the city forward. Anniston has been in the shadows for too long. We do not want to continue to be bypassed by cities that are around us. I live in Anniston. I love Anniston. I drive 142 miles round trip every day. I work in Birmingham, but I live in Anniston. And people ask me every time, why do you do it? Because I love Anniston. And so we need to bring Anniston to a new pedestal, to a new forefront, so people will be proud of where we live. And I just believe that the residents here will stand behind the city. The city has my 1,000% support. I have a great relationship with the city. I'm a big contributor to the city. And whatever I can do to move the city forward, I will. But I get tired of having conversation with other residents, and when they ask you, where do you live? You say Anniston, and they frown, and they put their head down. I'm a proud citizen of Anniston, I always will be. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
anybody that wants to speak here to speak. We've had public comments. I think at this point, this board needs to sit and talk about things and be able to have an open discussion and be able to talk for a minute at the close, or we can adjourn and do that later. Let this board decide that.
I believe we amended the agenda, Mr. Chairman, to add the resolution that we sent forward, that was emailed out today.
Okay, so we need to
Take action on the
take
resolution.
action on that, okay?
You'll need a motion and a second and a recorded vote since, Ms. Pritchett is on the phone.
All right,
Roll call vote?
Yes, sir.
I think we need a motion first.
yeah, who's got the motion?
I make a motion.
I'd be glad to make a motion as a resident also. I've been here
Okay.
on the board for almost 20 years and I own property here for that length of time. And I would like to see movement in a forward direction. And if we can begin proceedings to look at that, then I make the motion to move forward with the expiration of the motion of this dissolution.
Mr. Hess had already made the motion, but you,
I withdraw my motion. Yeah, go ahead.
Motion to adopt the resolution that was sent out.
sorry.
Is it a motion for the resolution?
Yes.
I withdraw mine. Go
Do we
ahead.
need, all right, do we need to read the resolution?
Especially with Ms. Pritchett on the phone.
Okay. You want me to read it?
Please do.
Okay,
Give me the phone.
all right. It's,
She's still there.
she's down there.
What now?
Sarah.
Okay. Resolution, the Board of Directors of the McClellan Development Authority. Whereas the McClellan Development Authority, the authority, was incorporated to acquire, hold, improve, install, construct, own, lease, develop, perform environmental restoration and remediation, sell and otherwise dispose of the real and personal property of the parcels of realty of the formerly comprised Fort McClellan military installation. Whereas the legislature of the state of Alabama authorized the creation of local reuse authorities, such as the authority, to provide valid and fully authorized public entities empowered to assist counties and cities affected by base closures to develop former military installations for the purpose of promoting industry, trade, and economic development. Whereas the period for the duration of the authority is perpetual unless dissolved in accordance with Article 9 of the Authority's Articles of Incorporation as provided by Act 2009-337, subparagraph 20, Acts of Alabama 2009, which is codified in Alabama Code 1192B-20. Whereas the authority's Articles of Incorporation and the enabling legislation and authority may be dissolved by inter alia, the adoption by the board of a resolution that does all of the following. 1. Determines that it is not possible for the authority to achieve all of the purposes for which it was formed. 2. Determines that either all debts and obligations of the authority have been fully paid or extinguished, or that adequate provision has been made for one or more successors to accept or assume all remaining debts and obligations of the authority, if any, pursuant to a plan of distribution provided for in its Articles of Incorporation. And 3. Recommends its dissolution. Whereas the affairs and operations of the authority are supervised and monitored by an oversight committee composed of all the members of the legislative delegation from Calhoun County, Alabama, as well as the members of the Calhoun County Commission and the Council for the City of Anniston, Alabama. Whereas on November 26, 2024, the authority's oversight committee met and unanimously adopted a motion recommending that the board convene a meeting no later than January 2025 to adopt a resolution making the determination that it is not possible for the authority to achieve all of its purposes for which it was formed, and resolving to make adequate provisions over the succeeding 90 days to provide for the orderly transfer of the authority's remaining debts, assets, properties, and obligations to a successor, and immediately thereafter for the board to adopt a resolution recommending dissolution in accordance with Alabama Code 1192B 20A for the approval of the Council of the City of Anniston and the Calhoun County Commission. Now therefore, in consideration of the purposes for which the authority was formed, the vital importance of the reuse and economic development of the former Fort McClellan to the life, health, and welfare of the citizens of the City of Anniston, Alabama, and Calhoun County, Alabama, and the authority's ability to achieve the reuse and economic development of the former Fort McClellan, and the unanimous recommendation of the authority's oversight committee, the board of directors for the McClellan Development Authority determines and resolves as follows. 1. That it is not possible for the authority to achieve all of the purposes for which it was formed. 2. That the authority shall immediately commence with such efforts and undertakings that are needed to satisfy or extinguish the debts and obligations of the authority, or to make adequate provision for the City of Anniston as the authority's successor to accept or assume all remaining debts and obligations of the authority, and to provide for an orderly transfer of the authority's assets and properties to the City of Anniston. 3. The authority board of directors shall nominate and appoint one of its members to serve as a transition liaison. The transition liaison shall coordinate on behalf of the board and the authority all matters related to the transition, and shall liaise with the authority officers, its board members, and its staff, as well as with the City of Anniston and Calhoun County, as may be necessary to facilitate fulfillment of the purposes and intent of this resolution, and to maintain a positive and productive dialogue and communication with all interested parties. And number 4, the authority shall take such action so that within 90 days of the adoption of this resolution, the authority may adopt a resolution recommending dissolution pursuant to Section A of Article 9 of the authority's Articles of Incorporation as authorized by Alabama Code 1192B 20A, and so that the authority may file a certificate of dissolution with the Office of the Calhoun County Probate Judge upon receipt of the necessary approvals of the City of Anniston and the Calhoun County Commission.
You have a motion from Mr. Garner, it requires a second.
Second.
My apologies, but may I ask one question?
Now we've got a motion and a second, so it's open discussion.
90 days, is that a hard number? Like, what if, because of the holidays and whatnot, what if if the city doesn't know whether they want to accept it, or if they're gonna have all they need for ESCA?
And I think
Can we do this anytime after? Could it be 110 or 120 days or whatever?
The next regular meeting is the last week of January.
Okay. Well, that's not gonna be 90 days anyway, so.
No, but it would be a period of time within which you could sort of see how things are going and make a determination then whether you need to adopt another resolution with additional time.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
It's gonna call on that, Jamie.
We have a motion and a second. And I guess we need to call for
There has to be a roll call vote with Ms. Pritchett on
a
the
roll
phone.
call vote, right?
Yes, sir. Mr. Breimer,
Yes.
Ms. Borelli,
Yes.
Mr. Burrows,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Garner,
Yes.
Mr. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Jordan,
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell,
Abstain.
Ms. Pritchett,
Yes.
Mr. McClellan.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Mr. Chairman, one thing that was in the resolution that is now triggered is there was a provision for a transition liaison to be selected. That would be appropriate to come before the board at this time.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I make a suggestion or nomination
Yes.
for Ms. Borelli? She seems to be a good choice. She has knowledge of working with the city. She's previously worked with the city. Obviously, she has a lot of time invested in this. I think she'd be a good person. I'd like to nominate her.
Any other nominations?
closed.
Are you willing and able to do that?
Oh, I forgot to ask, does that pay any money? I think they're gonna double you pay here.
Hey, I'll take it.
We need to vote, we only have one nominee.
Well, Mr. Hess moved to close nominations, we need a second on that. Second. Mr. Burrows. And with only one nominee, the chair can move to approve by unanimous acclamation.
So moved. All right. I think we need a motion to adjourn if there's no further business.
That would be next in order, sir.
Move
Make
to
that
adjourn.
motion.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.